Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of A24 on the Rocks. I am this week's host, Blaze Fitzgerald Ryan the First. I am drinking Truly's, I believe this is the Punch Pack because I go by 7-Eleven sales.
My name is Cole William Whitlaw Gibson. I'm still keeping it fancy with my Jefferson Ocean Aged Whiskey. Living the dream. Up next.
I'm Eric Kiska, and I'm drinking a G&T Gin and Tonic on the rocks with Bombay Gin.
I'm Kelly, and I'm drinking a really cheap $5 rosé on the rocks.
And I am Kevin K. Konachek, and tonight I am drinking Russell's Reserve Kentucky Straight Bourbon, 10 years old. Ooh, only $30 a bottle.
A24 on the rocks.
Delicious.
Sounds crisp. Okay, well, this week on A24 on the Rocks, we get to do one of my favorite films. I had a feeling this one might be divisive, so we'll find out. This is a movie called Spring Breakers. It was directed by Harmony Korine. Gummo is his other famous movie.
Don't know.
This movie was it was made in 2013. I'm sorry, it was released March of 2013, and the elevator pitch of the movie is where four college girls go down to St. Petersburg, Florida, to live out their spring break fantasies. They get into a little bit of trouble, and they get helped out by a gangster named Alien. And so it's all about how they deal through their trials and tribulations with getting back home for some of them or staying there put. So, I think a good way to start this is the way we started the other episodes that we've done is all three of these movies so far have had pretty big dramatic openings. This one, for instance, starts with Skrillex, Nice Spirits and Scary Ghosts, and in a hyper-realistic version of what Spring Break is. So, Kelly, I want to know what your impressions are on the vibe check on the opening of the movie.
I've seen Girls Gone Wild a few times.
Yeah, fair.
That's what this was. That's it. There's nothing else to it. That's all.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Right on the top note.
Okay. So that was your one impression
That's
on the... Okay.
So my first impression was that the movie wanted to make sure it delivered on its advertisement right off of the bat. Anybody going into this movie, anybody who saw the trailer, knew that they were about to see, fairness, a lot of tits and ass, and lots of things about Spring Break. And as a viewer, you are going to get that within the first 5 minutes.
Titties and big booty, that's what
Right.
life's about.
Exactly. Whether it's artistic or not, we can debate later on in the podcast, but from the intent of the director, I feel like he definitely hooked in and promised or fulfilled the promise of the video pretty much right off the bat.
Okay. Cole, what was your early vibe check?
My early vibe check is, look at all my shit. Because I heard that line so many times in such a short span, I wanted to kill myself. But to start off the movie, the 2-minute mark was the first pair of boobs, so I guess that's a good thing. I don't, if that's what you're into, I am. Also, I like the Kimbo Slice reference when they're just watching a YouTube video and it's just Kimbo Slice going to town. I wrote, the vibe of the film was this was either written by a very horny teenager or a very lonely man that never had fun. Turns out, fun fact, we're going into the fun fact corner here, the director said that he made this movie mostly because he never actually had a spring break and never got to truly enjoy it. So he wanted to live vicariously through it. And surprise, surprise, I guess he accomplished that. But that's my quick 2 cents.
Yeah, and then for me, this film is so Florida. Like, it doesn't even start in Florida. And you already have the purples, the pinks, the neon blues, cyan blues. And then also, like, I don't think any of these characters are realistic people. Nobody talks like this. Like, who thinks going on spring break in Florida is going to be a spiritual journey like you're gonna see things differently and you're gonna really find yourself, doing a bunch of cocaine and drinking a ton of, shit in Florida. Like, I don't know anyone. I was like around the age these people were when this movie came out. I don't know anyone who talks like how they did. And
her name was Faith. So
yeah.
I think Eric brings up a really good point. My first big point is that this movie, the overarching theme is how youth culture was back in the early 2010s. If you think about, like you said, when we were in college ourselves, that's when Jersey Shore, Real World, all these big reality shows were huge, and they would overexploit what the party life was. And I think this was kind of ahead of its time in the fact that how he looked at the youth culture as like a vapid, soulless pop music video. They reference video games, they reference movies a lot, they reference, just the pop, gangster style lifestyle. And I think it was an overblown for the effects to get his point across. He had to make everything bigger than life. For example, I want to talk about the cinematography a lot because I love the cinematography. I love, as Kelly was saying, just how like bubblegummy and poppy and everything was. And I noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed, but they kept going back to the My Little Ponies was always on TV. And how bright and colorful and rainbow-like that TV show was. That's how everyone was kind of mirrored in their, ultra over-pop-fistic life. Cole, do you want to comment on that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, like, I like the cinematography in terms of, like, some of the colorings and stuff. It was very, like, I like the intense coloring spectrum that they had, and it definitely had that, like, music video vibe with a lot of the scenes, a lot of Britney going on, and a lot of colors, and, like, that aspect I thought was fine. I felt like it was very hollow when it came to the rest of the stuff. Visually, it was appealing. I mean, you had ass and tits and pretty colors, so I was all for it.
Well, what did you guys think of? So early on in the film, to get the money, they robbed a restaurant, and they did, in my opinion, a beautiful one take. Nicki Minaj was playing in the background, and it was basically a smash and grab. Did you guys have any like thoughts on that? Was that like just overproduction, or
for me, I thought it was interesting because we saw that scene twice throughout the film, right? We saw it the first time where we saw it from the viewpoint of the driver, where it was very low key, and it was kind of what the reality of it was. You drop your friends off, they go inside, they come back out, you've got money. Later in the movie, then we see kind of the fantasy of that same scene. The running in with the hammers, the telling everyone to get on the ground, this very Hollywood glamorized version of what a stick-up may be in the form of telling your friend all about it. And I really kind of enjoyed the juxtaposition of those two scenes, the way it was very simple, straightforward, and reality. And much like the rest of the film, where fantasy kind of blurs the line between what we're supposed to know, is the fantasy of spring break versus the reality of murdering people and taking a bunch of drugs, things along those lines. So I did like that particular scene, and I thought that it kind of was artsy.
So I have a question. I think, Blaze, you are okay with the movie like not being really realistic, us suspending, or you suspended your disbelief. And that stick-up, the first stick-up scene, I don't think it was realistic. Like, okay, Pulp Fiction was another movie where they robbed a restaurant, but that was the early 90s where a lot of people had cash. In, 2012, more people had debit cards and stuff. I don't think they would be able to rob a chicken shack and get away with that much money. And then number two, what happened to the getaway car? They stole it from someone, then they just lit it on fire, and no one ever wondered where their car went the whole movie?
Well, they got rid of the evidence.
Well, yeah, but somebody would notice their car's gone.
Right, it was their college professors.
Yeah, wouldn't your college professor be like, hey, fuck, my car's gone?
Well, yeah, he probably did, but
he could be in Kentucky looking for his car right now.
He's not a car
boss. To it though, like you can't just open that plot line and then like, all right, see you later. It was burned.
I think they close it off just fine. I don't think there's a lot of movies where they just get rid of cars.
Yeah, but like okay, come on.
Are you really hung
You ever watch Breaking Bad? That dude just burns the car he bought his kid.
These people aren't criminal masterminds. They're freaking college kids.
Exactly. Okay,
it's a shitty El Camino.
I think Kevin put up a great point, though, the juxtaposition, right? What you see, what really happened, versus when they're in the parking lot talking to Faith, who's played by Selena Gomez, who I think wonderfully played by Selena Gomez, someone who doesn't like Selena Gomez that much. In their retelling of the story, they were all like, get on your knees, you don't want to fucking die, give us your money, we're hard-ass gangsters, da da da. But when you look at the scene, like Kevin said, from the driver's perspective, but it was all, in real time, it was just people just handing their wallets over and like no real fuss or muss. I mean, they smashed a couple tables and stuff, but they weren't these like hard ass criminals that they were pretending to be in the parking lot. So I think there is a reality of, parking a car and setting it on fire, and they probably found it the next day, but they were already on their way to St. Petersburg. And,
I mean, okay, that would come back at towards the end, I think, but anyway.
I mean, they also took a Lamborghini at the end.
Yeah, it's not realistic that they would just go back home to their life in college after all that shit that happened. But we'll get to the end. Yeah.
Well, I have a question. I have a question for Kelly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Kelly. We are discussing right now the difference between taking this movie at face value versus taking it as some sort of indie art film.
Hyper pop, dreamscape.
Exactly. So give me your 2 cents on where this falls in the spectrum of an indie film trying too hard to be artsy and cool versus a glorified violence drama thriller with some famous Disney teens.
It's more leaning towards the second one, but it's not even violent enough to be that. It's more... So there's 2 things that I want to do. One, I want to talk about what we just talked about, that scene. There's 3 times in this movie that made me feel anything, and that was one of them. That long car that's going around the outside, that long one shot, watching them pop through the windows, was beautiful, and that was a really good scene. And it made me kind of excited to see where else they're going to go, and we'll get to where those expectations fell. And that would be the only one, if it kind of kept with that kind of atmosphere and that feeling, then it would fall more towards, like, gory, hyper pop, like crazy violence, more fun movie. In summation, it's like a 5-minute thought that someone had in their head and then made it into a movie. And I think that that's all that I gather from it at all, as far as the aesthetic, as far as the plot, as far as anything goes. So that's my answer to that, if that's appropriate.
Fair enough. Thank you.
But can I interject and say that repetition is a theme of the story?
I hear you. Definitely, I hear you on that.
I think the most famous line is "Spring Break Forever," and they say it over and over and over again. But I think, again, you want to go back and look at this. So they open up with this extremely loud, "Scary Monsters and Nice Spirits" by Skrillex, right, in the opening scene. The ending scene is a slow down piano version of the exact same song. So it's supposed to mirror itself. And like I said, we're playing into this whole pop versus reality movie where we are, as a society, we overindulge ourselves, through music, through video games, through stuff like that. Like, I don't want to get to the end of the movie right now, but I think there was some key signs that this was more or less in their heads of what actually happened, versus reality. I think if you can hang on to that, then it's a much more enjoyable film to watch, as the quote-unquote crime gangster pop lords that they were living out to be, I should say. But yes, I think repetition is a very, very important part. And going on to the music, I really enjoyed the entire score of this film. I think that was the most wonderful use of a Britney Spears song I could ever imagine. And I think it was artfully done. Kevin, I really wanted to talk to you about that. What you're the music guy. What did you think of how the music set the tone? Whether you like the tone or not, do you think it fit the movie? Or?
So, we talked about the intro a little bit already, where Skrillex hits the bat, and much like the rest of this movie, that idea of an EDM beat kind of repeating on itself, being shot like a music video, the whole trying to relate with late 2010 teenagers, it felt appropriate to start out with, to say the least. And then kind of from there, they did have some pieces that were very interesting to me. Of course, the whole scene with the piano and Britney Spears, of course, was very well done. I thought that was shot excellent with the waves and just the ridiculousness of the bikinis and the ski masks and the automatic rifles. The whole thing was, enough to keep my attention throughout it all. But unlike the other movies where I was writing down every other song and I really felt that it aided to it, I was distracted by so many other things in this film that the soundtrack kind of fell away from it. So there were those two key moments, but other than that, my notes don't really include anything about the music, and that's probably just because there was a bunch of other things happening that I was trying to pay attention to during that time. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Fair enough. So speaking of that scene, there is a character played by James Franco named Alien, and he is kind of the most interesting character, I think, of any movie that we've seen. You may not like him. Cole, what did you think of James Franco and almost like his self-actualization in his other roles, like being just total to the 10th degree in this one?
I think James Franco's character was very interesting. I think he played him like decently well. I did not like Alien, but he I don't think you're supposed to necessarily like him, but he definitely plays that whole that scene where they're at like hanging out, or like after he got them out of jail and he's kind of like pressuring them but not pressuring them and doing like, oh, I like you a lot, I don't want you to leave. I think he did that very well. The scene where we could jump to the sex scene, I thought that was quite an interesting scene with the girls, and like I thought it was going to take a very dark turn, and I thought they were just going to shoot him in the face, but they did not. Also, that scene was improvised where he started sucking off the guns. So good for James Franco, open-minded person, and it ended up in the film. So, yeah, and also I guess he based it off of some other rapper that I have no idea who it's about, but
yeah, he was definitely Florida man in my opinion.
Hardcore Florida man.
He looks like Riff Raff in this film, 100%.
And there was a lawsuit from Riff Raff actually claiming that there was a likeness infringement.
But like they were saying it was actually based off a guy named Dangerous, who was a Florida rapper at that time, and he was actually in the movie. And if you actually look at the two, I think it is more based, like Dangerous makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Also,
was he the guy with the chin strap
and dreads
in the pool hall? Okay.
The ATL twins.
So I guess
are real people.
Yeah.
And they only date one person at a time. Fun fact: it's real. It's very strange.
Oh, the twins?
Yeah, it's 100. Everything they said was 100% real.
They're into double penetration. That whole quote. Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Really. Well, I guess that's a good segue. Kelly, the other casting choices are very interesting for the time that they were casted, I would say. Selena Gomez, as we said, plays Faith, who's the more religious-leaning one. She's still kind of a bad apple, but I guess if any of them had morality, she would be the shining example. They also had Vanessa Hudgens, who's another Disney Star alumni, and then Ashley Benson from Pretty Little Liars. Now, what do you think Harmony Korine's decision was in casting these girls? Do you think this was their decision to like break out of the child star motif, or do you think like what do you think of that casting decision instead of like maybe less innocent girls, I guess, would be the PG way to put it.
I think that it's very clear throughout the movie that they're trying to really show off these are young college girls. Look at their stuffed animal backpacks. Look at how young and innocent they are. And so it's kind of like with Charles Swan, it's typecasting based on who these people are in reality. But I give no credit to the director for thinking of this because, as I mentioned previously, I think he thought about things for about 5 minutes and then made a movie. And I saw pictures of him with the cast, like Selena Gomez sitting on his lap. And I'm like, okay, I see exactly what your goal was to get these girls in your movie, you creepy pervert man. That's how I feel about that.
So do you think it is a problematic movie then? Like, as far as, do you think
it's a misogynist film for sure. The way that the cameras are, it's all male gaze 100%. And the way the cameras like roll up and down, it's one thing to do like the Girls Gone Wild kind of situation. It's a different thing to have these Disney stars rolling around in the hallway, being girlfriends that are like over the top handsy with each other, letting the camera fall and like their bodies up and down. It's like it. That's nasty to me. Like I can take a certain amount for a point, but there was no point. It's just all pleasure. It's all over the top crazy. And I get that that's like the goal of the film, but you can do something more with that. You can give them a backstory other than being, this one girl goes to a prayer circle sometimes and she lies to her grandma. And that's the backstory that these women get. That's it.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Cole, you want to say something?
Yeah, I got a question for Kelly. You are a woman and you go to the bathroom. Do most girls sit on the floor in the bathroom and count money? Because that was pretty disgusting to me. I'm just curious. I've never been.
Only when you're with.
It was very interesting.
Only when you're with 3 of your friends and you're hardly wearing any clothes.
Perfect. Okay,
I
that's
want
what I
the
was
casting
hoping
question.
for.
I'm going to take the casting question now. 2 things. A,
yes,
it felt incredibly cheap. It felt like it was taking the nostalgia and the fact that we had seen these girls at a impressionable young age, and now that they're 18 and legal and can put into a bikini, you can now take all of those individuals who fantasized all this crap when they were, younger, and now here we are as adults. It's absolutely nonsense. On the other hand, if you're looking at it from a perspective of an artsy-fartsy film, they could be looking at it as some sort of analysis of the culture of teen Disney kids and what spring break is and that whole culture, but that's a big stretch, and I don't think the director had any intent in that actually happening.
And I gotta say one more thing. James Franco, he has recently been accused of grooming girls that are underage on Instagram. And so now going back to watching this movie and seeing that scene of him basically grabbing Selena Gomez by the face and then like rubbing his thumb on her lips, it gave me really creepy vibes now.
You know what? That's actually a really fair point. That is, I think it was his acting class too, right? If I remember correctly.
Instagram too.
Yeah.
Real.
Vanessa Hudgens said that she'll never do a sex scene ever again after this film, because apparently it was horrendous and terrible.
Well, it was a pretty graphic sex scene. In the pool. Yeah.
Can I be honest with
Again,
that? Everything that they had in the movie leading up to the sex scene, I actually thought it was underwhelming.
Again, I think there is artistic merit to it.
He gave a gun a blowjob.
Did go so.
That was awesome.
Right, but again, because you take it into these girls' heads that that they're in this real ghetto environment. Again, I wanted to bring up Gummo, but unfortunately no one had seen it, but that movie's about the underprivileged minorities and how you can only get so far in life because the system is put against you. And I think this film shows, these privileged white girls go into a minority neighborhood, because when they're out partying with strangers, on the strip with the other college kids, they have no problems. They have no issues. Selena Gomez told her grandma she can't wait for her to come down next year. And then she goes into the minority neighborhood where there's mostly black people, and then she's uncomfortable, and then she doesn't want to be there. So I think the juxtaposition of, why is doing drugs and drinking with, white college guys okay, but once it becomes real, all of a sudden you're in a scary situation. So I think that's a very interesting point. And so when I put that into that sex scene with the guns in James Franco's mouth, these girls are living out a fantasy where they can just go back to it, right? So the consequences of their actions are never truly felt, even though what they do to people is, pretty despicable. But because they have fed this meme of, money, guns, violence, drugs, sex, on Top 40 radio, they think they can just slide right into the actual environment. And I think it's very clear in the end when, again, I'm not quite sure that scene actually happened. Again, I just love the final scene of this movie because I just think it's just so wonderfully shot. Again, the music is just perfect, and then they get on the dock, and the dock it looks almost like a runway stage. They're in neon yellow, and the girls just wearing bikinis, blasting people's faces off while they're like, you know, those like live, laugh, love, like posters that, you know, college girls have, you know, with this, that's what is overplayed is like, we went down to Florida, we made friends and memories and da 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 da. And I just think that's just a way that he wanted to show this film as, you know, the people that died were all minority black people, and the people that survived were these two white rich girls that could get out of it anyways. So I don't know if I have a question about this, but I just think that the end of the movie was just amazing in that light, if you take it for not what it is, but for what he was going for. I know I said a lot, so if anyone wants to comment on that, on anything I said.
Well, okay, so I, was trying to figure out, like, what is the overall message of this movie? What's the theme? I think you have been doing a good job, like, explaining what the intent was. But one, in every movie, I feel like maybe this is just a personal thing. I feel like for me to take away anything from a movie, I have to care about one of the characters. I don't care about any of these characters. Like, they're all just, like, very flat, hollow people, which I guess if, you're trying to kind of make this a comment on, like, reality TV and pop culture at that point in American culture, that could be realistic. Like, it's just one big car, like, train wreck, basically. But either way, like, it doesn't do the movie any justice, where I just don't care about any of the characters or what happens to them. But two, I was, like, wondering, what is the theme? Like, could it be a comment on the American dream? But what is the comment? Like, could be a comment on hedonism and, like, American excess. They glorify Scarface in here. But, like, there isn't really a comment in the end. Like, I guess maybe, like, he's the director is taking the audience's, like, disgust of these people and just saying, like, okay, like, the American dream, excess is kind of a disgusting thing. And maybe that's what he was actually trying to say. But for me to get to that point, I actually have to care about one of the characters to take something away from it like that, And like you were saying, in the end, they just, they kill all these people. They kill a house full of gangsters when they've seemingly never shot an actual gun before. And they just, like, kill all of them, like, really lucky they were able to kill all of them and just get away easily. And so it didn't make me feel anything about it. So.
Going off of what Eric just said, I thought, like, the end scene with, like, the whole gunfight, right when they, like, were walking down the boardwalk and one dude just quickly shoots and alien is just dead, I thought it was going to take, like, a very, like, maybe, like, a wake-up call for these girls of, like, a realistic turn of, like, holy shit, this dude just got blasted, instantly dead, game over. But then they just went on, like, a murder spree and killed everybody, and then left and acted like everything was okay, that nothing wrong, they're untouchable, nothing, I don't know. I thought it was very, I don't know, just kind of like a week out of just, oh yeah, they kill everybody, they kill Gucci Mane, they go home, they take a Lamborghini, and they have a good time. Also, the other two girls went home as well.
I think the ending scene, like you're kind of alluding to, Blaze, doesn't necessarily actually happen. I think it's kind of a play on, we were talking earlier about the diner, how it happened in real life one way, and then they talk about it a different way. And they, again, with the constant repeating of things throughout the movie and how no one actually says anything from their mouth, it's just oversaid on top of it. Something they kept repeating was pretend it's a movie or a video game. And the end of this is very much just Grand Theft Auto, girls in bikinis and ski masks, shoot everybody, they don't have any armor, all these gangsters that know how to shoot guns never can land a bullet on them. And it kind of goes back to what Eric is saying with, like, there needs to be a character you care about to take anything from the movie. Because if the director is saying something about how spring break's a big, huge mess, ew, gross, nasty, which he's not saying that because he loves it and he's reliving it or trying to live it himself for the first time. Or is the other thing that he's saying something about how spring breakers are a parasite on the community that they land on, and they leave all these people worse off after having visited them. Okay, that goes with my 5-minute theory.
I think that's
yeah, and then maybe that's what he's saying, but that goes with what I'm now dubbing it my 5-minute theory, TM. You can say that and you can think that and just, you can tweet it. That's all that he really did with this whole movie, because he didn't make you care about that fact or anything. It's just like, okay, if you read in between all these lines of colors and tits, maybe you'll see what I'm really trying to say. Isn't it thoughtful? It's not artsy to me. It doesn't really make me feel or take away anything.
So you guys are saying that he didn't earn his point is at the end of the day, right?
Lazy.
Because
that's what I'm saying.
Cheap.
Yeah.
It's lazy.
Hollow.
Okay.
Very hollow.
So can I ask you guys if, let's say, I don't think Cotty was one of the best, the girl who got her arm shot. But what if Faith had been coerced to stay and maybe, she kind of kept that, guarded attitude while the other girls, became part-time gangsters? Would that have changed anything? Or was it lost in the beginning the way, the spring break parties happened?
It would have made for... Yeah. Sorry, I just talked, so someone else
can
go ahead.
It's so basically, I think that it was actually necessary for the girls to leave in order for the movie to progress in the way that it was. We kind of saw a reality that was a little bit more grounded as the two girls were there, whether it was the party itself or just, moving after Faith left into the idea of a gangster getting mad at you for taking some of his turf and then getting shot. But then as soon as that second girl left, then it was fever dream extraordinaire for the rest of the film. And I do think that was intentional. I do think the director wanted to make this fantasy even more just ridiculous and over the top, including the point where the girls seemed to be the ones that were forcing James Franco's character to get hyped up to kill Gucci Mane. Like, it was all just so ridiculous and over the top there that it kind of just continued to go down that track in a crazy spiral. But whether that was intentional or not, like we talked about, it just does seem cheap in some circumstances.
I wanted to get back to the point because I really think it's important to drive home is that, like Kelly said, this was more akin to a video game, to a music video, to Scarface, like Eric said. And I wonder, like, if you guys are just taking things at face value because, like I said, maybe you guys only cared about it skin deep because the rest of the movie was so off-putting. Because when I see that Britney Spears scene, which, like I said, I think that's such an amazing scene, but at the same time, they're like at a wedding, and Alien and his two friends have their masks off. They go into a hotel room and they basically torture people while they're smoking weed. And in my mind, as someone who's seen the movie like 3 or 4 times, it's almost, again, like I go back to the scene where they're discussing the faith, where the robbery happened. And if this is just a big, an exploitation to pump themselves up of what the reality of what actually happened, I think that says a lot more than, these girls just went on a violent killing spree. I don't know. I think it had a lot to say in that. There's a lot of points that this movie tries to make, I think. But in that form, I think it's the vapid soullessness, our generation's low attention span, which is why the repetitives happened. I think, again, there's a lot of things that this movie's trying to say beneath the surface of tits, ass, and cocaine. I don't think I'm going to gain any followers.
I think we did just answer you there. Like, we see what he was doing, but we have to, one, care about one of the characters for us to really care about the whole movie, because that's a big thing for me. And then, 2, the director clearly stated his intent outside of the movie that he wanted to relive through a spring break or something. That was his idea for first making the movie. And so that makes him seem kind of shallow. Also, just like all these, the pictures of him after, just with Selena Gomez sitting on his lap, like, you can see that the director, yeah, he was trying to say something, but I think he was also enjoying all the grossness of this movie at the same time.
But isn't that what an exploitation director is supposed to do? Like,
no, the director's supposed to look at it from an outside angle and, present it to the world and not...
I think it delivered exactly what it said it was going to deliver to its audiences. It literally gave us all of those things. No. And then
I think
maybe it gave us a swerve. If we look at it 4 or 5 times, then you can come up with an analysis that doesn't fit the norm. But honestly, I think it's exactly the way we're describing it. Sorry, right. Blaze, I love you, but that's just our opinion.
Yeah,
that's complete. Hey,
I can respectfully disagree.
Listen. This is not a Blaze-tatorship. This is a Blazeocracy, okay? We can all... We can all decide how we
now,
feel about it.
Has everyone only seen this movie
whatever.
once? Is everyone else? Is this our
No,
first
this is
time
my
watching
second time, and I was actually going to say
First
that I
time.
actually liked it more the first time I saw it, but is because I saw it in college, and I did not think that deeply about this movie, and maybe that's
You're not supposed to.
why I liked it more. But yeah, I was probably the core demographic for people that when this first came out. You know, I was like a 21-year-old, man.
Well, I think it was marketed wrong. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, Blaze, who also loved this movie and dubbed it his 2013 best film of all time, of that year, not all time, was Quentin Tarantino. And surprise, surprise, lots of bare feet, lots of women running around without shoes on. So, not that surprising that he liked it. I don't think he dove as deep as you did, but you and Quentin Tarantino both like it.
Foot counter? Did you get one?
I don't have a foot counter. There was way too many feet going on. They did a lot. They did a lot of handstands without shoes in the middle of hallways. Yeah. They did that like 3 or 4 times. I don't know what was going on. Then they sat in a bathroom, and lots of feet.
That took me back to a great Nelly song, though. And the Backstreet Boys song. Oh, it was so great.
I do want to. Can I talk? But no, I do a little bit about the fashion of that time, because I actually that was a kick. Like rewatching that, like. Woman wearing sweatpants with like stuff on their butt, the flat brims, and just like all of that fashion during that time did give me a trip to like go back to that. Ellie, you were talking a lot about that too.
Yeah, it's like it came out like the year that I graduated high school, and it was kind of interesting to go back to that time when fashion was literally the worst it's ever been since we started caring about fashion. And also, like, it was fun to hear all the Skrillex over again. I used to have a Skrillex haircut, fun fact, but it was fun to hear that, and it fit the movie, but it got old real fast at the same time. It is the most awful of all things, both that kind of, like, dubstep and the fashion at the time. But it was fun to be like, oh yeah, remember when that was a thing?
Was because Ellie Goulding's track is at the end. Were they like dating yet when that movie came out? I wonder. Because Skrillex and Ellie Goulding like dated for like a minute, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. But I just wanted you guys to know my last piece on this was when I first saw it, I was not the biggest fan of it because of how it marketed itself. It marketed itself as like a action movie when it really was a lot slower paced than an actual action movie. But anyways, so now it's time for our favorite part. I think it's time to grade this movie. So Kelly, let's start with you since I think we're gonna go up. I don't know.
Okay. With my 5-minute theory, I think that us having talked about it and everything, we've given a lot more thought into it than anyone else involved with the project. There's more that I wanted to say, but I don't know. We all know where this is headed. It's worse than Charles Swan for me. It's a A24.
Wow.
Wow.
The first A24. All right, Mr. Kevin.
So, I think we all did touch on the highs and the lows of this movie, and I will give it its props as being a part of movie history for better or for worse. It definitely is a title that people remember, and it's a title that we all were either looking forward to or knew existed on this list, therefore giving it some merit. After watching it and overanalyzing the absolute shit out of it, I have decided that it is better than I initially thought it was, and maybe that's just because I've convinced myself that it wasn't just an absolute misogynistic, hedonistic piece of garbage. Either way, it was an enjoyable watch because I knew that we would all be talking about it, and it was fun to analyze it as it was going on the screen, and maybe that's a bad way to watch movies, but at the same time, it really kind of gives you a different perspective if you're looking at it from the lens of a reviewer or the lens of maybe the director in that circumstance. But anyway, back to my review. I think after all of those things, it's a C- for me. So it has its positive parts in it. I thought James Franco actually was pretty damn good at what he did, regardless of his intent on the whole thing. But the other flaws was just too much for me to overcover. And C-, yeah.
All right, so I do want to start out with 3 things I did like about this movie. The cinematography the lighting and the set design and the music. It succeeded at creating a world. That's a few things I will give to the director that made me give this a better grade than I initially would have. And he did a good job with that. But then after that, the actual script, the writing was, I think, pretty atrocious. Just the spring break forever. Like, I mean, did he just watch The Sandlot or something? Did The Sandlot and Spring Breakers have a handshake right there, where they both have very slow cuts of people going forever, and it was just not good. And the acting outside of James Franco was good, but the acting outside of James Franco did not lift up the script at all, and it just they were not good actors in my opinion. They did not succeed. Like I say again, none of these characters I cared about, and for me to care about a character, it usually has to do with the acting and the writing of the character, and I didn't care about any of them, which means it failed at both those things. And so, in the end, I can see what the director was doing. I can know, the message he might have been trying to get across, but for me to actually care about that message and for me to think that he was saying something kind of prophetic, I would have had to care about more of this movie. So for me, it was a D plus 24. Yeah, it was not worse than Charles Swan for me, but it was not even close to good for me. So
Cole?
Yeah, I like Eric said, I like the cinematography. I like the colors. I thought it was shot very well in terms of that stuff, but as for the actual content in the film, I felt like it was very hollow and just I just felt like it was missing stuff the whole time. And also, it was only a 90-minute film, but there were scenes that dragged on way too long. So it honestly probably could have been an hour if you cut it down. The scene with James Franco, and he just kept saying, I got shit, and it just went on for 5 minutes, and I was losing it by the end of it. I just could not handle him anymore, because he kept over pronunciating, it drove me crazy. It was a fun film. I watched it. I'm not going to watch it again, and I'm not going to recommend it for anyone else, but I don't think it was worse than Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab was not a good film. No. But it's such a... Maybe we gave this film, not the best chance, because we went from Ginger and Rosa to this. Mm-hmm. And they are so different, but they're both
That's true.
Oh, it's young girls growing up and experiencing new things and stuff, but vastly different, way done very differently, and I like Ginger and Rosa way more than this film, so I'm gonna give this a D plus a 20 or a D plus 24.
Yeah, I forgot whatever. My prefix. Oops.
Hey Kevin, do you give your grade a little bit more up because Jeff Jarrett was in it, or
it's exactly where it was? A24, C minus.
C minus 24. C minus 24.
Oh, C minus 24.
C minus 24.
Shit.
So yeah, I feel like I've said a lot of what I had to say about this film. I just to echo Eric and Cole, I think that the cinematography was the best we've seen so far out of all the movies that we've seen. The soundtrack was on point, maybe not as on point as Ginger and Rosa, but I do think that the sound was there to make a point. The lighting was amazing. I love the, just the oversaturation of everything. I think for me, it all worked as someone who, can look at it from a third party perspective of almost like God looking down on these people as the hedonistic ants that they want to be, because that was the commentary that they were making, is that we are selfish, vapid, soulless people, and the youth are just have the attention span of a beetle. So I think he made a really good point in all that, and I think James Franco's over-the-top portrayal of Alien was the best I've seen him in. Maybe 127 Hours might be better, but that's debatable. and like I said, the colors, it just kept moving along. I do agree with Cole that there was some slow parts. I do think some of those scenes could have been, cut a little early, but I think the overall message was there for me. So I'm going to give it a B24, solid B. I would definitely recommend it to everyone to see at least once, at least to get their opinion on it, because I do think it is a decisive movie. I do not think that this is a gray movie. I think it's black and it's white, in the fact of whether you're going to like it or not. So, yeah, that's it. This is our first movie where we were all kind of, well, you guys, I guess I was really the only dissension.
Yep. 4v1.
Hey, no, that's... So yeah, no, that was really fun to actually have some verbal banter where we're not just shaking each other's hands over everything. So that's really fun. So I believe our next movie is kind of a movie around the same ilk. I can't remember what it's called.
The
right
Bling
now.
Ring, which is actually a true story about these group of, I think it's a group of women that went around Hollywood stealing stuff, like doing home invasions on very famous celebrities. And Sofia Coppola wrote and directed it, and I'm a fan of hers, but yeah.
Interesting.
Unlike her brother.
Yeah.
Right.
So, wait, Blaze, one last thing, though. You live in Tampa Bay, across the bay from St. Petersburg. Is this, realistic to Florida,
It's not even... In my so I moved here when I was 27, so I don't do spring break or anything like that, but I have never turned on the news and it was cocaine parties in motels. I think the poorer parts, once they got to that part, I think that was very reminiscent. There's a lot of people who hang out outside barbershops and pool halls and stuff like that, and they throw money in the air for no reason. And there's always the 12-year-old on an ATV doing burnouts, but as far as the spring break part, I mean, like I said, that was just an over hyperization. That's what Jersey Shore says spring break is. So no. And Tampa's even worse. Tampa's even older people.
I did want to say one last thing too. There was an abandoned sequel under the names of Spring Breakers: The Second Coming. And it was actually about spring breakers coming into conflict with Christian extremists. And, Harmony Korine and Franco were not on board with that, and it never got made.
Also, one point that none of us brought up, that god-awful transition noise every fucking scene with the gun load or the bullet load or the shot, was just god-awful. Terrible.
There's a lot of things that I wanted to bring up, but I gotta spare Blaze. I gotta spare the listeners.
Oh, we didn't want to shit on him.
That gun one.
God.
Oh my god.
See, I don't like when I'm driving and I'm listening to rap and I hear gunshots or police sirens because I always think it's happening around me.
Yeah.
I hate police. I think police sirens should not be allowed in any radio station.
I get freaked the fuck out when I hear that.
I've listened to it, and it's all of a sudden.
Next time on A24 on the Rocks.
All right, spring break forever, bitches.